we were laughing.
Is it Peters or Pierce or Pieterse?
Pieterse, which is close.
Pieterse?
Pieterse.
Pieterse.
So I say Pieterse.
Oh, I can do that. Okay.
So Odjaghian. Odjaghian.
Odjaghian.
Odjaghian.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Join me, Sasha Pieterse, on Women in the Nude, Season 2, where we bear it all except for our bodies. Leave that to your imagination. Welcome to Women in the Nude. Tina, I'm so glad that you're here. And just like I have people not pronouncing my name correctly, I'm probably going to butcher this too, but Tina Odjaghian.
That's like spot on, actually.
It took me a while, but
thank you, Sasha
I am
Pieterse.
so glad. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to have you here. A friend of ours introduced us, and honestly, when I was just going through your social media, even I was like, this girl is incredible. You are an absolute powerhouse. It's insane.
You're so sweet. Thank you for saying that. I feel the same way about you. I binge watched all your sound bites on IG, and I was like, she is so cool.
I appreciate that. But for the people that may not know, you are a critical brain injury lawyer. Like, that's what you specialize in.
Catastrophic brain injury. Yeah. I do a lot of brain injury litigation, some spinal cord, serious injury cases mostly.
That is so wild.
Yeah.
You were so much more than that, but I want to find out more about that first. What made you want to go into that field? How did you fall into that?
So I fell into it. It's not like med school where you can like decide what you want to specialize in, right? You just come out in the field, you get a couple of jobs, and you see what speaks to you, what you advance at, like what you like. And so I was a defense lawyer because I graduated at a time where a lot of big firms were going under, and I was competing with 20, 30-year out attorneys for the same gigs. And so I started as a defense lawyer, and then
that's so cool.
It was
that's like one of the Barbie dream. It's like, yeah. Sorry, continue.
I mean, look, I didn't really necessarily enjoy. I felt like I was on the wrong side, right? Because I was helping corporations like get richer, and people were getting screwed. I never really defended cases where the folks on the other side were catastrophically injured. Like I represented Macy's and Bloomingdale's and all of their SoCal claims, but I learned the other side of it. And when you learn the other side of it, makes you really good as a plaintiff's lawyer. I feel like because you can anticipate their moves. Right. So the minute I broke off from the firm and started a practice on my own with one defense client. And then slowly but surely we started taking on plaintiff's clients. So how I got started is I was in court one day, and there was a woman crying on the court steps because her husband had fallen off a roof. And it was devastating. Norma was her name. We became friends. She passed away, sadly, a couple of years ago. But her husband had fallen off the roof, and her then attorney was trying to force them into an $80,000 settlement, which wouldn't even cover his meds for 1 year. So, yeah, it was really sad. And I convinced my then partner to take it. I'm like, look, we know the defense side. We can do this. So we took it on, worked it up. This was, 16, 17 years ago, Sasha. We settled it in the mid 7 figures, and ever since then just kind of got word of mouth referrals. So I fell into it, literally.
But how awesome.
Very awesome.
That is so awesome. I mean, like, you are helping people at one of like the worst times in their life. But that also, I feel like, has to take an emotional toll on you too. Like, how do you navigate that? Like, those are, I would assume, very emotional cases.
It is, right? It's really hard to not internalize it, and you kind of have to do a good job. You have to feel it on your own skin. But I just try to focus on the fact that I am there for them at the worst time in their lives, and I am part of the rebuilding and part of their silver lining, and I'm really sort of proud of that. I feel like I'm setting a good example for my boys. I take them to my brain injury support groups whenever I can, and they look like they're so proud of their mom. Like when clients are like, oh, she changed her life, or she did this, that, and the other. I just feel like I'm setting a good example, hopefully, most days, for my boys of what a strong woman should feel like. And so I try to focus on that aspect of it. Every once in a while, though, I'm not going to lie to you and say I don't lose sleep over it. I do. There are some cases that are super gut-wrenching and, difficult, and, it's hard.
Yeah.
I look at our friends who are physicians, same deal, right? Mm-hmm. Especially ones who are doing trauma and critical care and oncology. Absolutely. It's, there's definitely that component of it, but I try to focus on, we're part of the silver lining. We're helping them rebuild, put the pieces back together as much as possible.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And I binge shop at 3 a.m, which helps.
Why is it so therapeutic?
I don't know, but it is.
My best friend is a inspector general for the Navy,
How
and
cool is that?
so amazing. But I've known her since I was 9. So I saw her go through law school, passing the bar, all of the things, and how difficult that whole experience is. And then, yeah, finding her groove and what she wanted to, move into. And she is such a badass. She's such a badass. She's this cute little Filipino girl who just nails it. And she always talks about how, though, that like courtrooms make her nervous. And that's not really her side. She's kind of in a different department. So I'm like, what does a courtroom feel like for you?
Look, I think everyone gets a little bit of performance anxiety before you go and argue a big case, right?
Yeah,
Or a big motion or something, or, go on a podcast or have a speaking engagement. And I
for
feel
sure.
like a little bit of nerves is good. It makes you perform better, it makes you give a shit, it makes you prepare more, right?
Totally.
Um, so I do get nervous, but I think after practice, 20 years of practice, I feel a little more, I don't know, I feel like no matter what gets thrown my way, I've got the requisite knowledge and reserve in my brain to deal with it. So
Yeah.
I've got a little more ease, a little more comfort in my own skin
To
when I
work the
walk in.
room. Yeah. You
Yeah.
feel like you gotta, yeah. Yeah. It's so fascinating to me. I love it. And I think that it's such you're so inspiring because it's not an easy feat to get there, and then to actually do well in it is like
Thank you.
a whole other thing. And I love that you've just built yourself on that. You said you and your husband have been together for 20 years
20,
ish.
22 years. So
Ish.
bad. 22 years.
That's amazing. And so were you a lawyer before you met?
No. So he was sitting for his dental boards the same time I was taking my bar exam. We went to high school together, and we spoke in high school and then
Aw.
connected like 10 years later when his parents moved in across the street from my parents. So um we've been together since the beginning, and like we built everything together, which,
That is really cool.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we've both known our partners for a long time. Yeah,
Uh,
since high school and that sort of thing.
there are days I want to kill him,
Oh,
but most
for
days,
sure.
most days.
Yeah,
Most days.
it's an up and down.
He looks like my little one, so I keep him.
um, what have you learned from kind of like building your lives together in that way? Like, you were saying he was a dentist.
He was a dentist.
Okay,
He retired to help me with my practice and
amazing.
kind of help manage our real estate a little bit. And so, I think relationships are hard, and you have to like
Absolutely.
work at it daily, weekly.
Agreed.
I'm very type A. I'm very sort of controlling. I'm like that with my practice. I'm like that at home. I'm very much in
Mm,
charge. And so it takes a special kind of a man to be able to deal with that
yeah,
and be okay with it, and, have it be a situation where we don't kill each other. And I feel like that's kind of the perfect balance.
yeah.
Um, there are days that I get frustrated, but then I remind myself that if he were like me, we would literally kill each other. So, he's very supportive. He's definitely part of my support structure, like helps a lot with the kids. It helps me with my practice,
It's
is the
awesome.
voice of wisdom when I'm losing so it works
Yeah,
out. So far, so good.
yeah. I think that's the key is like that type of support. And I like that you mentioned that not every man is like that, but ladies, they exist. His Hudson is like that too, which is really cool. It's nice to have supportive partners that even when like, you know, the woman is in a really strong career
Yeah.
or something that is really time consuming, all the things,
Yeah.
that's success. Like there are men that are cool with it.
Yeah.
And it takes work.
Look, it's two sides of it, right? Because they support you and they're happy for you and they can see the best of you, but at the same time, they're not threatened if
Right.
they're okay for you to have the attention on you when you walk in the room or whatever. Some men can't necessarily deal with that. I know
Yeah.
sometimes it's a cultural thing, but I really genuinely feel like he's proud of me and wants to see me succeed.
One thing that I do want to say, how old are your kids?
I've got a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, Charlie and
Amazing.
Luca. They're
Oh,
so
I
cute.
love
My
those names
12-year-old hit
too.
puberty already, but my 10-year-old is still like a baby blown up into man size. He's so fun.
I that I, Hendrix is 4, and thinking of him being those ages, like it blows my mind.
Yeah.
How like were you practicing while you were in the courtroom? Like were you pregnant and
Yeah, so I went through a gnarly partnership separation I couldn't get pregnant because I was just so stressed out and things weren't really going the way that I wanted to. And then as soon as I got myself out of that situation, I got pregnant with Charlie. And
Mm.
so if you can imagine, I was pregnant and building a practice from scratch,
That's
essentially.
crazy.
Like, I remember my website went down and I had to stay up until 3 in the morning and draft the content for my website, like 8 months pregnant, crazy things like that. Right.
Yeah.
So I did it simultaneously. I built a practice and had my baby simultaneously. And so one of the things I advocate to young women who like follow me, who I mentor, is that because they tell them, you can't really go to law school. It's so demanding. Don't you want a family? And I tell them, don't let other people dictate to you what you can and can't do. Sky's the limit. You can do whatever,
Yeah.
as long as you're honest with yourself, you make provision for imperfection, and you just do your best at it. So I was 9 months pregnant and building a practice. I went into labor and delivery and then did an intake 7 days later with a family whose husband had passed away. And I remember I had an episiotomy. So I had like this bumpy pillow that I was sitting on at my office
Ouch.
on the 7th day. But, you remember those things. I'm proud of it. I'm genuinely, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have done it any other way. And then with my second one, I had a full-blown practice, a 2-year-old toddler. We had some issues getting pregnant. I got pregnant through an IUI the first time. And the doctor pretty much told me, look, you're probably going to be on bed rest. You're going to be high risk. And my husband, God bless him, was like, well, why don't we look into surrogacy? And his family is so conservative. My family is so conservative. But the fact that like he was open to it, he suggested it, was really cool.
Very cool.
And so we did that. And it was the best experience of my life. So
That's
baby
awesome.
Luca came through a surrogate on Christmas Day, like the perfect gift.
Oh,
That was
that's so
really cool.
cool. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, what was the finding the surrogate? How was that? What was that process like?
So I was really good friends with my fertility doc, and he was in charge of labor and delivery at UCLA. Like he taught it. He was in academia. He was like really, really smart guy, Richard. And I called him and I was like, look, here's the deal. You know what we went through the first time? Armin saying surrogacy. Is this insane? He's like, T, all of my clients are European and Asian, and they come do it here because the laws are so much more favorable. Why don't you come in on Monday and we'll talk? Because it was on like, I don't know, Saturday or Sunday on the weekend. So when I went in on Monday, he had taken the liberty of calling 3 of the surrogates he'd recently worked with that were compliant and healthy and
Amazing.
asked them, hey, would you be willing to do it again? And basically set up interviews for me
Wow.
without me even knowing.
That's so wild.
And so I met the first woman and her husband, and I instantly like connected with her. I thought she was really great. She had had Asian twins for like the mayor of, I don't know, Santa Barbara or something. And another,
Wow.
so this is going to be her 3rd time being a surrogate. So she was a professional. She had kids of her own.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have to worry about her, partying and out and about.
Right.
And I don't know, I just felt comfortable and said, let's do it. And it was honestly the best thing we ever did.
That's so cool.
It completed our family.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's really special. We didn't have to. I thought that I might actually have trouble getting pregnant because I have PCOS, but we didn't end up needing any intervention. But I had already been thinking about all of those things. Like, if we can't, like, would we get a surrogate and that sort of thing? And I actually have a friend friends who have a surrogacy company. And I'm sad to see so many people against it.
Mhm.
Don't know why. It's such a beautiful thing to me.
Yeah.
But I also, in practice, would feel not control issues, but I feel like I would just be overthinking all the time.
Yeah.
Like it feels like such a big choice.
Yeah.
How to find somebody, how to not be like a terrible, what would you, the parent to being like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Or what are you eating? What are you exactly?
Right?
Yeah, it's so wild.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I would go grocery shopping with her. I'd be like, you have to eat all organic. And so I remember one time she called me. She's like, look, my husband's from Hawaii. I'm craving spam. Can I just make an omelet with spam? And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that, but sure. And so it's funny because my older one is like this tall, thin, like Ethiopian looking child. And then my little one is like a ham. He's like pink and fluffy. And I'm like, it's all the spam she ate while she was pregnant with my baby.
Those omelets.
So, you just have to look. It's really funny that I'm telling you this, and anyone who knows me would chuckle, but you just have to relinquish. I think the first half century of your life, you're learning how to relinquish and trust your gut. That's it. If you trust your gut more, right, and you relinquish the need to control every little thing more, you can be so much happier and so much more productive, I feel like.
Yeah. I completely agree.
You know, it's
I
a daily struggle.
It is totally a daily struggle, and I do feel like the more years I get on me, the more comfortable I feel too. Like I have never felt more comfortable in my own skin than I do right now, and it's because of all the shit that's happened before.
Yeah.
You know, you do have to kind of elbow your way through things and figure out how you feel about life, and
100%.
but it feels great when you're there. I'm loving it, and always willing to learn more. And I think it's a really fun place to get to as a woman.
100%.
I'm really enjoying that.
100%. It's worth the wrinkles.
1,000%. Not that you have
And
any.
the cellulite. But, you know, yeah.
I have that. Plenty of that. But yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful thing being able to follow your career, have your babies, you know, build your life, and then being able to do that with somebody that you love. I mean, I'm thrilled to be able to kind of live that out. It's not easy, but it is
And you have
really
a beautiful
cool.
family.
Oh, thank you.
And your
So
little
do
one's
you.
so cute.
Thanks. He's the best. I know. Boy moms. I love being a boy mom through and through.
The best.
They really are.
And people tell me, well, who's going to inherit all your nice stuff? I'm like, I don't know. Hopefully a nice girl they bring home. If not, I'm going to do everything I can to sabotage.
Right. Ooh, let's talk about that. Because
no, let's not talk about it. I'm not ready. I'm not ready for it.
I'm not ready either. But those are some things that I also think about where I'm like, I want to be a good mother-in-law. I want to be in my kid's life. I want to be in, you know, like if he decides to have kids, their life. Like, but man, I'm concerned that if he picks somebody that I don't like, that's gonna be gonna be so weird and hard. I'm not looking forward to that. I'm nervous that, not that I'm gonna be like an asshole. I you know what I think it is. I think
she's given this a lot of thought.
I have. I'm concerned, and this will just be an adjustment, and I think I'll be okay at it. But I'm I think more tentative about the fact that, like, I know that relationship will just, even with the best partner, if he picks the best partner, your relationship changes, your dynamic changes. It's a shift, and that it's a continuous shift. Obviously, as they get older, there's a lot of steps before that. But
you can't kiss them on the lippies anymore.
No, I don't want. I that's going to be a really sad day.
I know. Look, 2 steps back, you said I want to be a good mother-in-law. You have to be a good mother-in-law if you want to be in your kid's life.
1,000%.
But I think we have to take whatever steps we can now to instill confidence and good decision making in them, so that they pick the right life partner. All the tools, right? And use the veto power. You know, right. I'm down for bribery. I do it now. You know, you don't want to be cut off. That's not gonna work with our family. Or, you know, whatever you can as a parent, I feel like, to positively influence your child's decision making, but then you have to honor their decision once it's made.
Yeah,
you know. But yeah, bribery is definitely a thing. Not gonna lie.
What are they into? What are the boys?
Basketball. My entire household is consumed by basketball. Yeah, I don't even know what the hell that is, but something that's college ball, right? Yeah, no. Yeah. College, pro, whatever. League ball. We had to pull out a league ball because we were struggling with grades a little bit. My older one has severe ADHD, as I had growing up. Mine was undiagnosed because parenting was different back then, and
it was.
His is diagnosed, and so we're trying to do everything we can without medical intervention to kind of help him.
Yeah.
And part of that, unfortunately, was making the difficult decision of pulling him out of league ball to have him focus on academics, and then slowly reintroducing it back into our lives. But he's into basketball and video games, which we limit a lot because of his ADHD. That's just like toxic for him. And then my little one is more go with the flow. He's into fashion. He'll go to things with me. Like, cute. I had a speaking engagement for Balmain in Miami, and he came with me. And we got him like a little outfit and Balmain sneakers, and he was into adorable. It. And I was like, oh, cool. He's my best friend. He's, you know. Yeah. So people say you don't have a girl, you don't get to do who you can do the fashion stuff with. I do it with Luca for now.
For sure. But also, like, boy stuff is only getting cuter, so it's great.
Yeah. So, and he builds Legos. He's more versatile in his interests, you know. But you learn that they both came out of the same parents, but they're their own individual
Mhm.
people, and you got to let them.
Yeah.
And for someone like me, that's difficult, you know, like
Yeah.
I can be overbearing. And so I have to kind of stop myself every once in a while and say, okay, just got to tone that down a little bit.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
But fun. And that is part of what I'm really loving about 4. That's
Hmm.
like obviously that's much younger than yours, but he's very versatile and he's such an easygoing kid, but the things that he is particular about crack me up. Like it's me. There's certain things in there that I'm like, yep, that is totally my child. He is stubborn in all the same places. But it is really fun. The Legos and the traveling and he's into all of that stuff, and he loves the camera. So I feel like he will be that kid. He just naturally will be the kid that is like gonna be tagging along to things and enjoying it rather than it being like a chore for him. My biggest thing, so you were saying just don't get pregnant. That is my honestly, that is my biggest fear, is that type of life decision where like it's that's permanent. That person now, whether you like it or not, is in your family. That stays with you forever. That's a forever choice. So it's like, just pick wisely.
Yeah, dude. Yeah,
Just
please.
pick wisely. Wrap it up. I wonder, like, when he becomes a teenager and a young adult, like, what type of male birth control will be around. Hmm? Well, they keep talking about it, shots and all that
Yeah,
stuff, but it's
yeah.
like, are they actually going to do it? That's the thing. But like, if you can, if by the time
They're happy to poke and prod us all day.
I know,
So annoying. Anyway.
so if by the time like he's a young adult, if that is an option that I am under some sort of control over, I might be like, so here, when you're, I'm going to take you to that appointment to get your shot.
Yeah.
Um, I don't want to ever think like, I don't want my first opinion on women to be bad. I'm trying to be super conscious of that, because I think as women, we are so quick to point fingers at each other, which is such a detriment, and we're all guilty of it to some degree.
It really is. Not as supportive as we should be, for sure.
No, in so many ways, we're our own worst enemy, and I'm trying to really be conscious about that. But there is this thing in the public eye where it's like, there are women out there that do try and get guys pregnant, or try and get pregnant from, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is terrifying. That is a terrifying thought to me.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about this earlier, where it's like, not that I am like uber famous by any means, but I'm in the public eye, and he will be in the public eye as secondhand. So there is a lesson to be learned there that I want to be so delicate with. But it's like, there are unfortunately going to be people that will probably try and be his friend because of who his family is, or who his parents are, or who, what he has access to. And so
that's unfortunately true.
And that's the sad thing for me, because I'm like, I don't want, at what age do you introduce that topic of like, you might not be able to trust every friend or every person that wants to be your friend. I don't want him to like look at relationships like that, but I also don't want him to be naive about it.
Yeah.
And dating, I also don't want, I want him to be able to recognize signs of like, hey, maybe that girl doesn't just want to hang around with me, or maybe that guy doesn't want to just hang around with me because they like me.
Yeah.
It's like that type of gauge, like whoever he decides to love, like there's going to be an angle. Some people have angles, some people don't. And it's like, how do you teach your kid that extra layer of like public eye?
I think you're going to have natural opportunities, right? I think even with us, like when we go out, especially in like the Armenian community, and we get recognized and people actually know them more than they know me, like, oh, we love your food videos, or we love for Luca and for like my older one, and your basketball videos and whatever. So they feel good about it. But at the same time, I think I'm starting to introduce the idea of, hey, look, there's acquaintances, there's friends, there's people that are family friends, there's people we don't trust everybody. We are careful. That is a family fact. We don't share that with everybody, just to kind of make them understand.
Yeah, I like that.
That you can't just, because kids at that age are super trusting and super sharing, and that's the way it should be, and they're so innocent and it's so beautiful. but at the same time, it can harm them if that
Yeah.
doesn't, so I feel like it's our job without making them paranoid, you know, of introducing, and every kid is different, right? I feel like my little one, I say, he's a petri dish baby. He's a gypsy. Like, he's so smart. Like, he knows what's up, right? And
A
he gets
petri dish
conspiracy.
baby.
Because he's like survival of the fittest, and he like gets, conspiracy theories. He gets all this stuff. My older one is just like, will give you the shirt off his back and not think about it and not understand the concept of,
Yeah.
reciprocity and like trust and all this kind of stuff. So, but I think there will be natural opportunities for you to talk to him about that, because you'll be out and about and people come up to you and,
Right.
see how he reacts to it, how that makes him feel, and then go from there. Right now, it's that cute phase where he's just adorable.
Yeah, he's so friendly. Like anyone, he will hug anybody.
Aw.
He wants to say, yeah, he's just such a love. And that's also, I think, what it comes from too, is like, oh, that won't be there forever.
No, the opinions come out
Um,
next year.
yeah, I
Yeah.
believe it. I
Yeah.
believe it. Yeah. But, he's open and warm and just like wants to be a part of everything. If I get recognized, he wants to jump in the photo. And it depends on like, yeah, the vibe of the situation. Most of the time, no. But there's been selfies where he's happens to like be in it to some degree. Yeah, and he thinks it's really funny. He doesn't know why. He'll be like, yeah, too.
Cute.
I did Comic-Con in Germany at the end of last year, and I brought Hendrix and Hudson with me, and we traveled after that. But that was his first like convention that he went to, and he thought it was so cool. And he was just like, I don't know why all these people are here, but
That's really
but he
cute.
was
I used to
into
take
it.
my kids. I take my kids to all legal conventions,
Yeah,
all speaking engagements. I feel like, and I tell their teachers, because I would try to lie about it and be like, "Oh, we're doing he's out sick or ditch
he's
day,"
going to the dentist again.
but they all follow us on Instagram, so they're gonna see that.
Right.
So now I'm just like, look, Miss, we're gonna be at it. We're going to Miami for 2 days for a conference. I think it'd be
Yeah.
really valuable for him to experience this.
Yeah.
And my little one, I don't feel bad, because academically at like 4th grade, he's not missing as much as he would be in 6th or 7th. So I
Right.
take him every opportunity I get.
Yeah.
You should too.
We will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thankfully he's a good little traveler. What are you trying to implement when it comes to like, we've just talked about boundaries when it comes to like friends and that sort of thing, but like when it comes to like their career and what they want to pursue, when you grew up, like, were your parents kind of funneling you into a direction, or was it more of like an open?
I was a tumbleweed in a sense that we moved here when I was 10 and my brother was 5. And we left Iran because of the Iran-Iraq war. And although they weren't drafting 5-year-olds into the army, I've gotten a lot of backlash for talking about this. They were doing this thing where they were marking their passport and forbidding them from exiting the country so that they could be available for the draft in 4 or 5 years, right?
That's so wild.
And
to think
so
about.
my dad lied to us, because he knew my mom would never leave our,
Mhm.
home and our lives back there, and said, "Oh, we're going on vacation to the States." So we came with one suitcase, and then he said, "Just kidding, we're not going back." And so he then moved and was gone for 25 years at a time to like the CIS countries and to Iran, and was like working and sending money here. And my mom was working at my aunt's flower shop. I was working in my mom's flower shop to kind of help ends meet. So the discussion of college and what do you want to be when you grow up wasn't really a thing. I feel like I didn't really have much of a childhood, because I was working at my
Yeah.
mom's shop all the time just to kind of help support the family. I'm that weird sandwich generation where, it was different. I mean, it's a blessing. I got an opportunity to live out my American dream, but it wasn't easy.
Right.
Right. So I think I went to CSUN and I was ditching class all the time because I did makeup and I made so much money doing makeup back
Like,
then.
why would I study for this? Yeah.
And like when I wasn't doing makeup, I was helping my mom out at the flower shop, like Valentine's Day, Christmas, prom for corsages or whatever. And I had surrounded myself though with Armenian and Iranian friends that came from affluent families who'd been here for a long time. And they were all going to med school or law school. Med school or law school was kind of like that was the prerequisite, right? And I would look at them and say, yes, they have a support structure in place. Yes, their dynamics are different, but if they can do it, I can do it. And I don't want my kids to have to struggle the way that I'm struggling right now. I faint at the sight of blood, so med school's not it. I love to argue. So maybe law school's it. And then I went and saw my my counselor at the time, my college counselor. And he was like, dude, you have a 1.67 and yeah, good luck. Well, what law school do you like hope to get into? You maybe like a non-accredited one somewhere. So I had to really make a commitment. And it was a good 2 years where I slept 5 hours a night because I was working 35 hours a week still because I needed the money to pay for like books and life and
Yeah.
food and and I had to get like 20 or 30 A's in a row, something ridiculous, to get my GPA back up to acceptable territory, score really high on the law school admission test, and got myself into Loyola. And once I got there, I was just like, I was so happy to be there.
Finally get there.
Right? Because everyone else is like, oh, this is such a chore. We're here because our parents made us. Not,
Right.
That was some of the kids there felt like that. And I felt like, oh my God, I like won the lottery.
Yeah.
So that's, did they funnel or direct? No. In fact, when I told my parents, hey, I'm going to law school, I got into Loyola, they're like, are you sure? I don't know if that's a career for a woman. Don't you want to start a family? That just sounds like a lot to you, maybe business school. And they weren't trying to hold me back, but they genuinely had concerns about my ability to succeed in a field that they viewed as being predominantly, male. Right. And so they didn't really, I think I had guardian angels in my path, honestly, Sasha, that got me to where I got to. Because dad wasn't around. Mom, poor thing, was working like 80, 90 hours a week.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
But it builds character.
I was just about to say, yeah. There's your work ethic. It is an incredible story. Yeah, there's your work
Thank you.
ethic right there. Yeah. So when it comes to the boys, they are growing up seeing you as an incredibly strong woman, both inside and outside the house, which is phenomenal. They already inevitably have great examples for them. And so do you have like any thought in mind as to like what
I would like for them to pursue a profession, because I'm from the old school, that they can always fall back on. But I'm also cognizant that the world is changing.
Yep.
Right. And so when they say, Mom, this YouTuber does this or this influencer does that, and I'm like, no, you can't have a social media account yet,
Yeah.
I also want to set them up in a way where they can succeed in the world today, because
Right.
I am technologically challenged and I don't want that for my children.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm mindful of the dangers of, Mommy, how many likes did that video get? How many comments? And I don't want a 12-year-old worrying about that, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I want him to have the requisite skills he needs to succeed. So it's a constant struggle. He wants to be an NBA player. And, I want to be that mom that says, go for it, kid. If you work hard enough, you can do it, but not at the expense of his grades.
Yeah.
Right. And also with knowing full well what the chances of that are, without wanting to kill his dream, but you want him to be not realistic, but have something to fall back on and understand that that is extracurricular. We
Right.
got to focus on the curricular. Right. My little one is a really great debater. I'd love for him to become an attorney and come join my practice and take over one day. That's just my dream. But if you ask him, he's great at building, so he could, potentially be a good architect. I don't know. Engineer, maybe. Yeah. So, but going back to the work ethic issue, I feel like I worry and I struggle because as much as you want to instill the work ethic in them, and as much as you hope that they're going to learn by observation, it's different. It's not do or die for them. They don't feel it on their own skin. I've got this work ethic and I did all those things and I endured trauma doing all of those things because I had to. I didn't have another choice. But for them, they've got a pretty cushy life and they've got, and everything any kid could ever dream of. Right. And so back then when my mom would tell me, hey, you know, no, on the gumball machine, like we really can't. But with them, I can't tell them we can't because they see
They
how
know
we
that you
live.
can.
And
Yeah.
so I'm trying to figure out an incentive, a way for them to earn things, a way for them to understand. But at the end of the day, as a mom, I think that's my biggest concern is like raising conscientious, good kids who aren't spoiled, who are kind, who are good humans,
Yeah.
right? And every decision you make where they're observing, that's kind of in the back of your mind of, okay, what kind of example am I setting for them?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, but listen, I've had dreams that I go to that event where they're announcing which kid from which school gets into which ball team, and Charlie gets into one, and I'm hyperventilating and I'm freaking out, and he gets into, I don't know, Arizona or some shit, and I pick up my life here and I move to Arizona.
Yeah.
And my kid's like a pro baller. I'm all about that life, but I
Yeah,
just want
yeah.
him to,
Yeah.
yeah,
I totally get it.
temper that with a little bit of reality.
Yeah. Well, I think you brought up several good points. And I think for me, I resonate with the work ethic thing and the struggle in environment. I think ultimately, because the world is changing so fast, because tech is changing so quickly, those jobs that have always been there, that have always just kind of been not relied on, but have just always been like an option for people, engineer, plumber,
Right.
all of the no, seriously, like,
Right.
a lot of different things that we have just always understood as like, whether it's blue collar or not, is just like a standard job. Those jobs are starting to disappear because tech takes over. A lot of different things are solved by technology. And so when you think of like traditionally what your kid can go into, by the time they reach that job might not even be around anymore. And so I think ultimately for me with Hendrix, it's like work ethic is a big thing for me because YouTubers, TikTokers, Twitch, like all of those different things, they're making careers out of that. And it's actually nothing to put down because ultimately their work ethic is crazy. It's not an easy thing to do. We might not understand it or like the style of it, or maybe not like the content that they're putting out. But in order to, it's still a skill. It's still a full-time job. It just does not look like the full-time jobs that we were used to, or that our parents did, or that our parents' parents did.
I agree with you. But what about, okay, there's a movie where they put someone in a time capsule and they're going to unfreeze them, I don't know how many years down the road.
Yeah, the
Stupidification,
cryo chambers.
Or what the hell is that movie called?
I know what you're talking about.
And everyone's super unintelligent, right? And they can't formulate a sentence, and they're inarticulate, and they're dumb as fuck, pardon my French, right?
Yeah.
And so education is a huge part. Education is a huge part of, thank you, hi. Education is a huge part of ensuring that your kid can put two sentences together and sound articulate and be eloquent and communicate
education, work ethic. I'm not putting education down. I completely agree.
But some of these videos I watch, it's like stupidification. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, what is that? Is that better?
Yeah. I think I just messed it up. I think the quality of education, like basic knowledge, and the idea of like being able to be scrappy and bootstrap and make something that you love happen.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that is like the ideal skill, because no matter what changes and happens, they'll find it.
That's true.
They just need to be able to like work, have the ability in them to like have the tools in their own belt to like be able to make a life that they want. It might not be our ideal. It might not be what we, initially think of for them. It might not be something that is like a quote unquote normal job.
Yeah.
But to your point of like going back in time or going to the future, I one thing that I've always loved about my husband is that he grew up in Wisconsin, like Midwest. He knows how to build things and,
So
change
necessary.
tires.
So cool.
And like things that like not a lot of teenage boys or kids know how to do anymore. And there are things about that I like want to make sure that Hendrix knows. Basic things. Girls too. Like I learned how to hang a shelf and, change like the seal on a toilet and like random shit that like
Jesus,
you
that's advanced. I'm impressed.
it's really not that hard. There are things that are still like general skill based that I want Hendrix to know, to also avoid those pitfalls.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
I do
God
not
forbid something
possess those skills.
catastrophic.
I don't. I'm just being honest. I do not.
We can't learn them all. But there are certain things where I'm like, I don't want him to lack in that space just because tech has moved up,
Yeah.
or just because he doesn't have to, or just because he can hire somebody.
Yeah,
Like I
100%.
there are general skills and a general knowledge base that I think are essential,
Mhm.
even if he doesn't become a doctor or an engineer,
Right.
or a this or that. You know,
Yeah.
like and jobs just are naturally look different compared to what they
For me,
did
no matter
before.
what you do, the most important skill is your ability to communicate well.
1,000%
You
agree
have to
with
be
that.
able to sell yourself, resonate with people, move
Mhm.
people, convince people, persuade, whatever it is you need to do. It goes back to the skill of communication.
Yeah.
So,
Communication is huge in our household in
Yeah.
general. Like it's a rule. It's a foundation. Even for him as at 4, you
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah.
I think we also often are guilty as parents of knowing what our kid wants or what they should want, and so not giving them a
Yeah.
chance to explain or ask properly or whatever. It's so much easier to be like, I know what you want. Here's your
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Totally.
But yeah, those communication skills are
Important.
very, very, very important.
I got on my boys' cases because they weren't doing their reading at night and their reading scores were suffering. And I was like, that is part of communication.
Yeah.
Like when I was bad as a kid, my mom would punish me and have me copy pages out of the dictionary. I didn't know what the fuck I was writing, but I was writing pages out of the dictionary.
amazing.
So
Yeah.
like when my vocabulary was more advanced than my peers at like 12 or 15 or 16, you
Yeah.
didn't realize it back then, but you attribute it to that very strange mode of punishment, right?
Right.
And so I decided to do that with my kids, but not make it punitive. Now they just copy pages out of the dictionary
think
as
it's
part
so
of their
smart.
lesson.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think vocabulary, the ability to communicate well, emotional intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
which to a certain extent depends on the kid, right?
For sure. Every kid is different. Yeah.
But there are things you can do to teach them concepts. You can teach them, you know, that they don't maybe learn in grade school,
Mhm.
like ethics. Do you know what ethical is, Mom? Like, you know, have these conversations with them in the car where they're like, why is my mother asking me this? But, you know, to introduce concepts that I think would be helpful and useful to them
Yeah.
as little people growing up.
Absolutely. I think there's also like traditional, not traditionally, but kind of, yeah. And I'm from South Africa. Then I came here when I was around 3.5.
Oh, wow. Very
So yeah, my parents and myself, that's it. Everybody else is in South Africa, and I totally know what comes from the South African side and what's traditional that way and what isn't. And so with Hendrix, I'm like, a big thing for me is getting him to just regulate emotions. I think that is, especially as a boy, is a really great skill, which goes right in with communication. It's like we all, you know, when you're in every age, it's different. So like 4 is all about like regulating anger more than anything else, you
Yeah.
know, like the tantrums, the whatever, like you're going to have big feelings. How do you, what do you do with them?
Okay.
And I think
When you figure it out, will you teach me too?
I know, it's definitely something that I have to practice myself. Like I said, he gets all of his stubborn things and all of that. That comes from me, not my husband. And that is my a thing that's really important to me with him too, is that like I want him to know that as a boy he can feel all of those things. He can feel sadness, he can cry, he can do all of those things. Feelings are necessary and needed, and it's just what you do with them that matters. Traditionally, people in South Africa, they like to yell. Afrikaans people, they tend to be more angry. They are very angry and very happy, and they're big emotions all the time. And I want him to be able to use that constructively and understand that like words mean things. Actions are powerful, and like people remember you by those things. And I think ultimately too, like when it comes to raising a boy, regardless of who he chooses as a partner, who he chooses to love, if you have kids, if he doesn't, you I don't want him to ever grow up thinking that like he can use the people closest to him as punching bags. We should be treating the people that we hold dear the best out of everybody in our life. I think we tend to like have this mentality of like, oh, well, they're always there, or their blood, they have to be there. And it doesn't matter, when in actuality, it really does. And I think our generation, or like millennials and under, have also kind of realized that like family, like chosen family, is sometimes more important. And I think we have that because I would say my generation, maybe a couple generations, or the generation above me, have gathered that like it's better to be treated well and to treat other people well than to just kind of take family abuse because you have to.
100%.
But I think that can also go too far. I think then we also get the problem of like not being willing to work on things with your family. And I think we'll come back to that center. But anyway, that was a little bit of word vomit there.
No. All valid. Listen, hey, you can choose your friends, you can't choose your family, but at the same time, you can't discard family, so you have to.
And it's definitely learning that lesson.
The Mel Robbins, let them be who they are, and just accept them and love them and work around it in a way that doesn't cause you more trauma and gives you the ability to move forward in a healthy way.
What is your relationship like with your brother?
My relationship with my brother is, he was my baby. I pretty much raised him. He was 5 years younger than me. And when mom and dad weren't around, we only had each other. And back then there were no cell phones. And so my dad was gone and mom was at the flower shop. And we had no way of reaching her. And if it was dark out, he got a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old with abandonment issues, thinking, oh my God, is mom going to come home tonight? It was kind of traumatizing if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
And so we have a special bond for that reason. But I think over the years, I feel I have been resentful in that I felt like I have had to pick up a lot of the slack. And I think when you're a doer and when people perceive you as being successful and someone who's just going to take care of stuff, they'll just put more on your plate and let you deal with it and have that be the norm. And so that ended up happening. My mom had a stroke like 8 years ago, a catastrophic stroke. Thank you. She survived. So that's honestly the best part of the story. And I had a light bulb moment where I was like, okay, this is why I do brain injury litigation, because your purpose is to help people, but you don't know why God chose that path for you. And then I was in Paris. It was my birthday on July 7th. I got a call that mom had a stroke and that we need to call hospice. They're saying she's not going to make it. She had a massive left MCA stroke, 7 millimeter midline shift, a lot of intracranial bleeding. And they told us to call hospice. They didn't think she was going to make it. And so my phone bill when I got it later was like 37 hours until we booked a flight, spoke to every doctor I know, every facility I know, had my mom transported from the hospital she was at that wanted to send her to hospice to an active rehab facility, kept her there for years while she went through the continuum of care. They nursed her as much as possible back to health so that she's cognitively kind of all there now.
It's amazing.
She's able to, I mean, she's not able to speak, she lost that ability, but it really got me thinking about poor folks who go through this every day and don't have someone to advocate for them and just get lost in the system. My mom was very fortunate because of, the specialty that I happened to be in and the resources that I was able to draw on. So I feel really honestly lucky and blessed, and I try to focus on that aspect of it. But yeah, there are times where I feel like, gosh, I really had to pick up all the slack with mom and dad. And my brother moved into our childhood home and kind of, didn't really pitch in the way that he should have. But then again, he's my baby brother. I've been taking care of him my whole life. And so I try to justify it in that way. But I think in general, it's not like a younger brother thing. I think it's an everyone thing. You're either a doer or you're not. And when people see that you're capable and you're able to, then they put more and more and more on your plate, and it has to be your job to be like, no,
this is my boundary.
I'm going to drop boundaries now. You don't get to do that anymore, right?
Yeah.
Even when I was a kid, I always felt like they favored him, and I wasn't sure if it was a Middle Eastern thing because he's like a boy child. But my dad was like, look, T, and I think I had this conversation with him one of the times he was visiting. I must have been in my teens, and I was like, what the hell? You guys do all this for him, and, what about me? And he's like, look, you don't need us. I can leave you in the middle of the street right now, and I feel like you would be okay.
Yeah.
You would make hair clips. I used to make hair clips, and like Solomon was very entrepreneurial at like 12. And you can do this, you can do that. But with him, he really like needs
He
us.
needs
He
it,
needs
yeah.
our support, which I get. But at the same time, you
It's
do
still
feel
not
a
fair.
little bit
Yeah.
like you're getting the short end of the stick. So
Totally.
I try to
Yeah.
not do that with my kids because I've got one that needs me more than the other, right? But I try to be mindful of how much attention I pay them, and the kind of attention I pay them is directly going to be tied to their self-esteem issues later on and their self-worth issues later on. And I try to nurture both relationships equally, but differently in the way that they each need it,
Absolutely.
Now
Yeah.
I did word vomit on you. I don't even
No,
know what
I'm
the hell your
glad.
question was at this
No,
point.
yeah, no, I'm glad. I'm glad that you did. Yeah. So like with your mom being a good example here, like if you got her as a client, what would your first steps be?
I mean, you got to look at, okay, so the brain trauma, was it a result of medical malpractice, negligence there? Was it a result of an injury on the job? So does it fall within the purview of workers' compensation? Was it a result of a car accident? So a result of a personal injury case? Because every single one of those cases is different. The standard is different. The legal standard is different. The tribunal in which you go before, is it administrative or you go in a civil court? Like it's all different, right? So for me, like for my workers' comp cases, let's just say, I get a lot of guys who have invisible brain injuries. They've had an attorney for like a year or two, sometimes 3 years, who they've missed that little bump on the head that's now causing them all the symptoms because they were focused on the broken elbow and the broken arm and the broken femur. And so now I come in and have to kind of put the pieces back together because the wife's telling me this guy just is not who he used to be. He's not the same person. He's having behavioral outbursts. He's having memory issues. He'll go into the room and wonder why the hell he went there. Something's off, right? And so my job is to put my medical hat on and do all the requisite tests necessary to do digging and the mechanism of injury, what happened, what could have happened. That's on more of the invisible, mild TBI cases, which there's like nothing mild about them. And then there's the more severe ones where you have like evidence of the bleed and stuff. But, they patch him up. He's fine. The bleed absorbed itself, send him back to work and wondering why he can't show up to work on time. He's getting into fights with people constantly. And so I come in there to make sure that they don't overlook anything, get them the care that they need first and foremost within the workers' comp system, because so many people get lost in the shuffle, especially as it pertains to brain injury, because it is such an invisible injury, right?
Right.
And it affects your entire body system. It's not like a broken bone, you triage it, you fix it, and it's good. Once you've got the brain injury, it affects your, hormonal system. It affects your endocrine system, your, the way you
Your motor
metabolize
skills, all of it.
everything, your motor skills, your psychology, and it causes depression. And so it's like an avalanche effect, right? And so first and foremost, I get them the care they need. The one example I like to give to lay people, because I think they get it, is I got a case, there was a $150,000 demand or offer, I forget now. So one of the attorneys had floated that number and they were very seriously considering it. I had a guy who looked fine. He had pretty much recovered. The scar was gone. And he was on the sofa all day. And this is a guy that used to work really, really hard. He didn't speak English. They weren't documented, so they didn't want to rock the boat too much. And his wife was like, look, he was a primary breadwinner, and now I can't get him off the couch. I don't know what's going on. And so we had to get him properly assessed and evaluated, put him in, a year of residential rehabilitation to work on his speech, to work on his occupational therapy, to work on his physical therapy and the motor dexterity and all these things that he had lost. And then once that regimen was completed, really assess and take a look and life care plan what it was going to cost him to bring him to his pre-injury capacity for the rest of his life, like what kind of care he's going to need, and really quantify that. And I would tell you, it wasn't $150,000. We ended up settling that case for $7 million cost.
Amazing.
And an annuity, which paid him over $10 million during the course of his lifetime. So they, on invisible injury cases, sometimes they're not undershooting it by a little bit. They're undershooting it in a way that makes the difference between the guy getting the care he needs and living in a home to him winding up on the street and dying,
Right. Yep.
So it's a lot, but it's also such a blessing to get to do that work. I feel really lucky.
Absolutely.
That I fell into it.
Yeah. That's incredible. So if they are an illegal immigrant or they're undocumented, like what does that look like for you?
So you do not have to be documented in order to avail yourself of the medical care and the benefits you need under the workers' comp system. Because, and the, obviously the public policy behind that is an employer can't hire you and pay you $2 an hour to
Yeah,
do the
abuse you
most,
basically.
abuse
Yeah.
you and have you do the most, honestly, the most dangerous, most difficult jobs. Think demo, think, getting up on scaffolds, and then discard you when you're near death. Like, that's not a thing that can happen. So it comes up once in a while in depositions when they ask questions and you just kind of obviously object, and they get to invoke their Fifth Amendment right to, you know, to not the right to not incriminate themselves and so forth. But in general, there are some species of benefits that are reduced if you're illegal. Like, if you weren't technically allowed to work, then do you really get all of these benefits that you would get only if you had a work permit? But on cases where I'm looking at millions and millions of dollars of medical loss and medical need for the rest of their lives, then the defendants have to make them whole, because they didn't give a shit that they weren't documented when they hired them.
Right.
They don't get to use that as a shield now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah.
On a sidestep, I have two sidesteps. One, because I cannot leave this conversation and not talk about your fashion.
Oh my God, I love you. Can I just say one more thing about that though?
Please, absolutely.
The most heartbreaking part though is that I've had situations where people are literally near death, but they won't go to the hospital because they are mortified at the prospect of getting deported. And so if there's one message I can get out to them, and every time
Please.
Telemundo interviews me or Univision interviews me, I tell them, the most important thing for them to know is your legal status is not a factor and does not preclude you from getting the life-sustaining care that you need. So,
Yeah.
I just feel like I need to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely
Sorry.
it is.
Fashion.
Yeah.
Fashion so much more
No,
fun.
my God, no. I just I wanted to give you that out as well
Thank you.
because
Thank
we
you.
don't have to go too far into it, but I think that that's not only is it important for people to know, but you're doing God's work in
Thank you.
that respect,
Thank you.
like it's what a tough place to be in to begin with, and then to not be able to get the help that you need is
Devastating.
it's unimaginable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And such a roller coaster. So thank you for taking that flag and running with it, because we need you. We need more of you in that
Thank you.
in that department. Yeah. It's a I think it's any sort of injury too. It's like you never really want to think that something like that can happen to you.
Mhm.
And then if it does,
Yeah.
then what? Just a lot of people don't understand that they have options.
Right. Right. One of my most devastating cases was an 18-year-old, super healthy kid, goes to work at Fox Sports one day. Super healthy, gym bag in hand, iron shirt in hand, and falls off the fifth story. Wheelchair bound, brain injury, spinal cord injury, near death, And so, to your point, you really, no one is exempt
Yeah.
from this kind of catastrophe. And so it's really important to be conscientious and kind,
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
people who are in that boat. Because
Yeah.
it's easy to judge and have political opinions about the administration and what happens and what should happen, and all of that. But when it's on your own skin and when it's your family, then you just never know.
Yeah.
Right. So I sit on the UCLA neurosurgery board, and some of the clients that are biggest donors now are, kids who went through UCLA neurosurgery for life sustaining procedures, and their parents are the most successful, most affluent, most well known folks in Hollywood. And the truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter how much success, how much money, which part of the socioeconomic status you come from, you're not exempt.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Tragedy happens, and
yeah.
it's yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Fashion. I didn't mean to cut off your
No,
fashion.
oh my God, no.
Let's do fashion.
That was
Let's
the
do
size
fashion.
when you're not saving the world, for sure. Um, what are your hobbies? I mean, if you look at your Instagram, it's filled with like the best fashion mom and lawyer content. I didn't know I needed all three, but I got them all together, and I love it. I'm obsessed with it.
It's the 3 Fs:
Yes,
fashion, family, food.
love it.
Those are my hobbies.
That's amazing.
Right. And fashion has always been a creative outlet. I grew up with 2 female role models, both of whom were always impeccably dressed. My grandma was a dentist back home, and she would have her fabrics flown in from Europe and have seamstresses just tailor them to perfection. And she would not leave the house unless she was impeccably dressed, even if it was to go to the market. It's very much from the old school. And my mom was the same way. She was this tall, striking Amazonian woman who would just beautiful, right? And so I always I was always fascinated by fashion. And when we moved here, obviously our circumstances were very different. We came in one suitcase and we couldn't afford anything, but I would always sneak magazines, 9.99 subscriptions of like In Style or like
Uh-huh.
whatever I can get my hands on, Harper's Bazaar, and just look at the shiny pages and just like, dream that one day I'd be able to kind of wear one of those pieces. And when my mom wasn't home, I would sneak into her closet and wear one of her old pieces, and you know, um, and it would make me feel just fierce in a certain kind of way. And so, as soon as I graduated law school and got a job and was able to avail myself of that and style myself and have that be my creative outlet, I did.
Yeah.
And so now people tell me, you put these looks together, you go to fashion weeks, do you use a stylist? Who do you like to use? And I'm always perplexed by that because I'm like, why would I use a stylist and delegate my creative outlet and
Right.
my hobby? That's like my favorite thing to do is to like style myself, style my friends, style my home.
Yeah.
I designed and decorated my home with an interior designer, and it's all 12,000 square feet of it. It was a lot of
So
trial and
fun.
error,
That
and
sounds so fun, though.
I
You
styled
styled me
Sasha
today,
in your
and
pajamas
it's
today.
so comfy. No complaints. No complaints whatsoever. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, fashion
Yeah.
is definitely a big part of my creative outlet. And in the beginning of my practice, I started my Instagram page like 13 years ago. I got so much flack for it, Sasha, because
I
as
bet.
an attorney, as a female attorney, as it is, like we have to work so much harder. I feel like to be taken seriously sometimes, and um, and so I was posting all these fashion shots and pics and stuff, and there was always whispers about like what the hell is she doing, and so then when I started getting great results, I would post that and pepper that in there as well, and it got to a point where I felt like my numbers and my performance and my practice spoke for itself, and so I felt entitled and free to express myself without getting the shade. And it's really funny because some of these men that would throw shade back then are now trying to do the same thing and flash their tattoos and their motorcycles and their car collection at
Uh-huh.
like 70
Right.
on IG, and it's like, wait, I thought you said that was not lawyerly, but okay. So,
Yep. Yeah.
one life.
Well, to that point, so I was, yeah, I was going to ask you about this, because you find that as an outlet and it's fun and
Mhm.
it's awesome. Do you feel like there is a double standard? Like, I literally was going to ask you, a lawyer is supposed to look a certain way, act a certain way. Do you feel like there was, you weren't taken seriously based on like what you wanted to wear and the fact that you were a woman as
I
in your
think
position?
I think it wasn't that's a really great question. I think it wasn't necessarily because of what I wanted to wear, but because I was a woman, I was a dark-skinned, like, looking woman. If I could tell you the number of times I've been mistaken for the Spanish-speaking interpreter or the court reporter, or, there was some guy that mistook me for his client, said, "God, you look great today. You got dressed up for this." And I'm like, "No, no, no, I'm your opposing attorney, and I'm gonna kick your butt in a second." But like he thought, because he was
Wow.
like 80 and couldn't see well, and thought I was his client, Maria, who was the applicant in that case. And I was a defense attorney back then. It was my first year of practice. But I think that there's a lot of folks that say, oh, if you talk about gender, gender becomes a thing. You don't have to talk about it. Strong women don't talk about it, and it just isn't a thing. But that's just complete bullshit.
Yeah.
Especially in my profession. I think we're at the point where now I think it's like 60% graduates are women. But if you look at who's trying cases in the courtroom, it doesn't quite translate. And if you look at um, the earning aptitude and potential, it doesn't quite translate. And so um, I think the advice I would give young women in my profession is to be yourself and to be true to yourself. I like to take credit for, because there's a lot of young girls that follow me that are attorneys and law students, for giving them some inspiration and like the idea that they can be free to express themselves more. And I'm seeing more of that. I would say less imitation, more authentic. Just be yourself. It's good to take inspo from others and make it your
Sure.
own, you know, but within the realm of reasonableness, right? I'm not going to show up to court in green neon hot pants. I'm not going to do that
Right.
because then I'm going to be doing myself and my client a disservice. And so, but I think there's a lot in the middle there, a lot of ability
There's
to
room to
express
play
your
in the middle. Yeah.
there's a lot of room to play. And so I would say be yourself, let your work speak for itself. And I'm always a proponent of more substance over form, right? If substantively you know what you're doing a good job for your client, you're getting amazing results, you're arguing well, your lawyering's on point, you know what the fuck you want. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if you're just there to fluff and post your fashion pic for the day and don't really have the substance to back it up, then that could be problematic, right?
Right.
Um, and I understand that when you first graduate from law school, you're not going to have the results and you're not going to have the track record and you have to fake it till you make it. I think maybe that's the time to present yourself maybe a little more seriously until, you
Right.
know, you get comfortable in your own skin and you find your stride and, you know, you go from there. But definitely express yourself. You have one life. Don't let anyone pigeonhole you into thinking you can or can't do something,
Yeah.
right? Or you should or shouldn't do something in a certain kind of way. Always trust your gut. Every time I've neglected to trust my gut, I regret it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
Last week, I turned into a private investigator
Mm-hmm.
because one of my clients was missing, and that's never happened to me before. And by the end of like, you know, the 7 hour rabbit hole in the middle of the night, I swear to you, I was like a skip tracer. You know,
Yeah.
I was looking into how to look up IP addresses and like all of it, right? Because I wasn't taking my investigator's word for we can't find them. What do you mean you can't find them? What the fuck? So I think Google is best friend, best enemy at the same time.
Totally.
Right?
I love ChatGPT.
Oh my God. Chat GPT is my new best friend. I'm
Dude,
obsessed
it
with
is
Chat GPT.
life changing.
Oh,
Life changing.
oh my
It
God.
really, really
It
is.
drafts my captions.
Yep.
It's amazing. I'm obsessed with him, her, whoever,
I
whatever
know.
is in there.
It
Right?
is really life changing on a productivity level, on like a talk about a soundboard.
Mm,
What I really love to use it for, I'm finding more and more ways to use
yeah.
it. That's has truly helped me in so many different ways. And one thing that you can do, I'm not saying to take your Chat GPT medical advice, like that's
Yeah.
not necessarily how you should live your life. I'm not saying that.
You know what? It's
So
probably
please,
smarter
this
than a
is
lot of
not
docs out there.
doctor, I'm not saying do this instead of seeing a doctor. But what is interesting is because if you do the deep research button, it will pull from clinical studies
Yeah.
and it'll like gather lots of different things together. So if you say, I have PCOS and I'm feeling X, Y, and Z, what are the statistics or the data behind whatever my question is? And it will take all of those documents
That's incredible.
and put them together for you. And so I'm not saying like, use that as your medical or your medical plan or anything like that or treatment plan, but like at least it's providing you with really cool information that
Yeah.
you can take to your doctor and be like, I'm feeling X, Y, and Z, and I feel like this is the information now that I'm armored with. Like, is this correct? Is that a possibility? Is it whatever?
Right.
Or test my blood for X, Y, and Z because you might find something there. It's like arming yourself with more information than we would have before. And it's not just like a simple Google search, okay,
Right.
hypochondriac thing. It's like,
Yeah.
this is actually coming from clinical studies
Yeah.
or
To your earlier point, you have to advocate for yourself in any situation you're in. And the more educated you are, the better you will be at advocating for yourself.
Yeah.
Like I've used Chat GPT before. I'm prepping for a cross-ex
Yeah.
of a doctor, just because at the end of the day, as much as I like to think that, I'm on par because I've done so much self-study, they're an MD, I'm not, right?
Right.
So I just continues to blow my mind how much you can get out of Chat GPT. And I can't wait for the next step of like agentic AI where you can start telling them to do shit for you. Because
Right.
that's like the next wave. So let's see what that's about.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I feel like what's cool about there's like a lot of misconception about like the Chat GPT or that AI side where like it's quote unquote cheating, but you have to prep it and
Mhm.
you have to like cater it to whatever you're talking about. And like there's a what I feel like it really helps me with is just kind of centering and deciphering my thoughts.
Mhm.
Like it's all mine or it's all some stuff that I want to know, and it's just kind of like categorizing it for me
Yeah.
and decluttering in so many ways and like making it way more thoughtful,
And you're
which I truly
training it,
appreciate it.
right? You
Yeah,
talk to it, you have
you're training it.
conversations with it
Exactly.
so it knows your thought processes and it gets to know you better. And at the end of the day, like if all of our colleagues are using it, we
You sink or swim.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 1,000%. Um, and so for like I talked to a friend of mine who's a professor, and I had said like, what do you do for kids that are using chat GPT or
Yeah.
things like it for like homework or study like essays and that sort of thing. And he's like, what's interesting is there's a platform where you can like run it through to see if it's like verbatim from like a chat GPT or something like that. But there are like certain little similarities that a lot of AIs have, wordings or punctuation or something like that. But he said, honestly, it's okay as long as there's thought process involved.
Yeah.
If I can tell that there is like
Yeah.
somebody like the students have trained it in a way where they're asking it the right questions.
Yeah.
It's a different type of skill and I'm okay with it. And then there's others that like say like, you have to handwrite it or like there's other stipulations. But I do think it's interesting, like as from a studying perspective, rather than like we're using it on the other side, like a
Yeah.
studying perspective, we all had a version of this,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was cheating off of somebody's paper, whether it was Cliff Notes, whether it
Right.
was, you know what I mean? Like,
Cliff's notes. Oh my God, took me back.
so there's always a
Yeah.
version of this. If you're going to cheat, you're going to find a way. And I
Yeah.
think that ChatGPT is a different category.
I think that everything's on a curve, right? And you're on the curve and you're going to be tested against your peers, right? And
Yeah.
so if everyone's using it, then I think the standard of the work product might go up, but then you're going to have to put the thought and the conclusion and the introduction and the analytical component and all that in there
You
for
still have to
yourself.
perform.
You still have to perform,
Yeah.
you know, and it's going to be compared just the way it would have been without it. So, yeah. I mean, I got my 12-year-old a phone. I finally bit the bullet. He was the last kid in his class, but we got one. So,
Yep.
I think it's just a matter of time before we say yes to
Yeah.
some form of social and give them access to Chat GPT and God knows what the hell else.
It's my niece got a phone. I think my husband has 8 siblings,
Oh my
and
gosh.
I have 8 nieces and nephews, and it is so wild to see them all together, and the ones that are getting tech and the ones that aren't, and they're FaceTiming to play video games, and they're doing all of that stuff, and it's like the couple of steps right before Hendrix, so I'm, like, seeing the future, you know what I mean? And they're so cute, and it's so great, but, yeah, when she got a phone, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe she's at that point."
New era. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and she's by far I feel like the most well-centered and, on the younger side of
Yeah.
her class too, like, for her age.
That's really great.
She's so into soccer, and she's, like, such a good kid, that I'm like, maybe she won't be focused in things that she should.
Yeah,
We'll
look, every
see, I
kid's
don't know.
different. Every kid's
Yeah,
different. You know, the thing that gets me is like, Mom, I'm bored, when they're off of it
I
after
know.
their, 45 minutes on the weekend. And I'm like, you don't have a right to be bored. We
Yeah,
didn't have this shit. We go
yeah,
look out the window, go count rocks. I don't care, but you don't
yeah.
get to be
Find
bored.
something. Yeah.
And the fact that you need that constant stimulation is concerning. So,
Mhm.
and there's all these studies that talk about like the detrimental effects of the video games and excess and stuff. So you
Yeah.
gotta just be mindful and do it in moderation.
Okay, this will be my second to last question.
Okay.
Um, the it might be a weird transition to the sexy one, but whatever. The video game thing is interesting. So Hendrix, being 4, loves being with his cousins,
Yeah.
and like I said, they all play video games, right? Some that I'm like, he's not allowed to watch that. We're not gonna, mm-mm. It can be so graphic, and obviously they're older, and whatever. But he saw Minecraft, and he was like, I want to do that. Had no idea what it was, and we were like, okay, do we even entertain this? Because my nephew had a video game party for his birthday,
Mm.
which was super cool. They have this like big truck roll in. There's like, 6 flat screens, and you can play whatever video games and whatever. And so he like held a little Xbox controller, and having never played with it before, was working this controller, and it blew my mind
Yeah.
cognitively that he could just kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
And so we have like an Xbox that we had to like literally dust off. I was like, I used to love playing video games, don't have time anymore.
Super Mario Brothers.
Love Super
I
Mario.
love Super Mario.
And so we downloaded Minecraft and he started playing on a world that is just him. There's no like
Okay.
anyone else. And he's like building houses by himself and mining for gold and like building a roller coaster and doing all sorts of stuff. And I'm just sitting there watching him like, how is he doing this at 4? Like, we didn't have access to technology
No.
like that when we were
No.
kids. They'll never, unless something catastrophic happens, they'll never know a world without tech.
Yeah.
So it's just so different for them. But for him to like, we see all the like the toddlers on iPads being able to like swipe things, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. But for me to see him like control with both toggles and like buttons and like go into his inventory and find stuff, I'm like, this
Wowza.
is so wild. And I want to limit it because when he's off of it, he wants to go back on it. It's
Yeah.
that like,
Yeah.
there's stimulation there, but I'm also looking at it like he's gaining different skills that like I wouldn't know how to replicate necessarily.
Yeah.
And he's a very visual learner and it's like cool like putting things together, and when he's not playing it physically, we're like role playing Minecraft.
Yeah.
And so Hudson's figured out that he can create a character and play it off of his phone. So now he's got a little buddy. And so Steve is there helping him build the Eiffel Tower and
That is
fireworks
so
and
cool.
all sorts of stuff. And it's like a bonding thing for them, which is actually really cute. But I never would have like, it was not on my bingo card to be like, my 4-year-old is building houses on a video game. Like, that just sounds so crazy.
But that sounds like prodigy stuff. Like, that's amazing. Look,
Maybe I don't know. Like maybe that is like his outlet into tech or something. I don't know. Maybe he'll build a video game one day. I don't know. But it's wild.
Look, for me, it's a constant struggle with my little one. I do feel like when he has his allotted like 45 minutes on the weekend and he comes off it, he's fine. He's able to like pivot and go play Legos or go outside or, but with my older one, it's either basketball or asking for more video game, even though he knows he's not going to get it. And so
Right.
that level of obsessiveness is what
Totally.
concerns me.
Absolutely.
And that's what makes me less inclined to let him do it more. As far as like the violence, they played that one game. Why am I blanking on it? Fortnite. And it just makes me crazy because I'm like, wait a second. We were watching Meet the Parents, and the part where what's his face cut his finger and there's blood squirting. You started freaking out and left and said, "Mommy, I can't watch this. Is violent. How the hell are you playing this video game?"
Right.
And he's like, "Well, it's cartoons. It's different. It's it's not real, Mom. It's not real." So look, you got to take 2 steps back even, right? My struggle initially was I've got social media presence. People in my community know who I am. Do I want my kids on there or not? And I got a lot of judgment for putting them on there in the first place, right?
Same. Yep.
Because of, it's kids. Is it safe? All the pervs out there, like whatever. But for me, I was like, no, I definitely want them exposed to that world a little bit. I want them, and if I can set up a little bit of a platform for them so that when they are mature enough to have a platform, they've got a little something, why not?
Yeah.
I want to set them up for success. So, but it is a constant like seesaw struggle where you're just like more tech, more, less, more, less. I think the studies are concerning that talk about, the way that it affects the neurotransmitters and brain functionality. So that's always kind of a concern for me.
Yeah.
And then you have to look at the kids, comorbidities. Like, do they have ADHD? God forbid, is there autism involved? How does it affect their particular comorbidities differently, right?
Yeah.
So constant struggle. And one has a phone, one doesn't. One's a law-abiding
that's gonna
citizen.
Be a fight
Right,
soon,
right.
Yeah.
One's a law-abiding citizen, one isn't. And we try to tie it to grades. So we'll see,
Yeah.
It's a reward
For sure.
for performance well done. You don't have to worry about that yet with your 4-year-old, right?
Yeah.
But you do probably.
Well, we are bargaining party training.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
There
always
is bargaining
an incentive.
involved.
There's always something to incentivize. Okay. But be prepared to roll that back
I
a little bit
know.
once school starts.
It did yesterday.
Yeah.
We've experienced.
You can expect withdrawals, but you have to be strong. You're the parent here.
I know.
Okay.
Okay, last question.
Okay.
What makes you feel sexy?
Okay. Well, what makes me feel sexy?
Doesn't have to be sexual either.
Okay. Let me think about that for a second. I'm all about natural beauty, right?
Mm-hmm.
and I don't do fillers. I don't do a lot of cosmetic procedures. They freak me the hell out. Actually, when my law clerks and my assistants who are like half my age do it, and I'm always that annoying like older aunt that's like, "What did you do? Did you fill your lips
I
again?
feel
Stop doing
I
that."
can
You
see
know,
something.
right?
Yeah.
And not to be judgmental. Obviously, everyone feels sexy and beautiful in their own way, but that's never been my
I haven't done it
thing.
yet, and it terrifies me. I'm not
Don't do it. You don't need
close-minded to it,
it.
but
Oh my
I'm
God, you're stunning. Don't.
so are you. But I'm not saying you might notice something next time. I don't know, but
I'll be
nothing
like,
planned yet.
"Sasha,
Nothing
no,
planned yet. Sorry.
no." So for me, honestly, like a well done spray tan with
Yeah,
perfectly placed tan lines, because if you can't tone it, you tan it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That makes me feel sexy.
that's a
Tan's always better
perfect.
than no tan.
Totally, it's life changing when you have a tan.
Tan,
It really, really does.
tan,
But a good
makeup,
one
nice dress.
has to be a good one.
Yeah.
Bad spray tan? No. Good. Yeah. There's a great place in Vegas. If you're ever in Vegas, I know a great place.
My hairstylist, nail artist, spray tanner, everyone comes to me because
Nice.
otherwise it would never get done.
Yeah, that's also fair.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
I wish I could tell you something sexier like lingerie, this, that. No,
No,
spray
that's
tan.
such a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Mine is just like being able to like be in the shower for as long as I want to like
Huh.
actually get my hair mask on and like be shaved and all the things. I'm like, oh, because otherwise it's like just doesn't feel like self-care. It's like,
Right.
the self-care
Right.
version of like
Uh,
taking like the time I need to like actually do some sort of a skin routine or whatever.
Your
I'm
skin
like,
is
I feel
glowing. Like
maybe it's sweat.
literally so pretty.
Could be sweat.
It's the pajamas. I'm sorry.
I'm not complaining. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was
Thank you for
beautiful.
having me. This was so fun. That was such a fun break from
I'm
the
so
monotony.
glad.
Love. Thank you.
I'm so glad.
And you're
You
delightful.
So are you.
As are you.
So are you. And I'm just so I'm honored that you'd want to come on and talk about your journey in your life. And you
Ditto.
are a huge inspiration.
Thank you.
And
As
I
are
think
you.
so many people are going to love this episode.
Thank you.
Thank you. Until next time.
Until next time.